well, for many of us, the thought of spending Ramadan in isolation was completely novel. For many Muslims, isolation in Ramadan was nothing new. This is, in fact, their normal situation, their typical situation. They are isolated, maybe locked into their homes, isolated in their homes, unable to leave their homes, or unable to go far from their homes. Or even for those who may be able to leave their homes, there's something that is preventing them from entering into those community spaces. No Muslim is truly an invisible Muslim, despite this title. Any Muslim who is invisible is simply one who is being overlooked, ignored, who we are turning away from, or who we have not been successful in finding. They're there, and it's up to all of us to see them in their reality. This is one of the reasons why when I see where we are now and the lessons we may have taken from 3 years ago and from that response, what I would hope is that we not only see it as a time when things were very abnormal and we're going back to normal, right? Because what was normal was not good enough for everyone, and in particular for these overlooked Muslims, or those Muslims who are invisible to us. Normal was never good for them. And so part of the lesson is not only to say, oh, alhamdulillah, now I, or we, my family, can go back and do the things as we used to, but how are we as a community going to keep the kind of inclusion and caring that we demonstrated during that time? I'll give you, I'm sure you all have some examples, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion together about this. But I think, for example, of a Muslim, a young Muslim adult who, for many, many years, because of a severe illness, was isolated in his home, bedridden. Such an eager student of Islam and of learning, and loved to learn. In fact, had reached out to me after one lecture that happened to be online from someplace. And because of that, and understanding the situation they were in, we began communicating, and I, shared some reading sources, responded to some questions. But this believer told me that that time of lockdown was the best time they ever had, the most joyful time they ever had as a Muslim, because now all of these programs and opportunities and gatherings that they were shut out of previously were now accessible to him, because everyone was in his situation now, right? The situation of being isolated and being able to connect with others only through the internet. And that really struck me. And I think of this all the time, and I think about how many others were able to connect. And I personally know very many people who fall into these categories. People who were hospitalized, people who maybe are pretty fairly mobile, but do have concerns still about gathering in crowds, and not just because of COVID, but for other reasons, because of their vulnerable health situation. Those who are living in long-term care homes, those who are um, who must stay at home and can't go to the gatherings because they are taking care of people at home. I think of some women I've known in my life who were the parents of severely disabled children, children are who they couldn't bring to the mosque, and not because and unfortunately there are some situations where people have faced really uh, harmful cultural ideas or stigmas about disabled children. But in this case, these children simply cannot tolerate a loud gathering with a lot of people. They may have some form of autism that makes that situation very challenging for them. And so their parent, at least one of their parent needs to stay home. So not only the child is missing the community, but the parent also, who is in fact facing a very difficult situation, a very stressful situation, is also isolated and does not have that feeling of community, help, brotherhood, sisterhood, and friendship that we all need. Yet, when everything was being broadcast and available online, they were able to listen, to watch, even sometimes participate, make a comment. So they weren't just watching videos, but they could actually, like Celebrate Mercy does, there was a facilitation of some discussion and feedback. How tremendous is that to be able to communicate something of what you're feeling or experiencing, or perhaps maybe this is the person who has a wonderful idea or great insight into a passage of the Quran, into some sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are people who can contribute something to us, but before they didn't have an avenue to share that. And so I think about this so often, and I know that so many of us are really happy to have those in-person gatherings, and they are important and they are critical. At the same time, it shouldn't be one or the other. And it's one of the reasons, and Celebrate Mercy did not ask me to do this, but I will say that I really do hope that more and more people support Celebrate Mercy and make it possible for them to continue to be online, to be accessible, to be open, and share so many programs regularly with our community, because there are many people who otherwise would not have that feeling of being heard, being seen, and they would truly be invisible. And it's not only they who are being deprived of their right for religious learning and community and fellowship, but we are being deprived of their tremendous insight